What are we responding to? No. Oh, that's interesting. I had not looked. I've never looked at it. Because we have an online presence, we're literally machmir on the time. It's got to be. Hey, how are you? Well, yes? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Shabbat Shalom. The word has come on high that we need to begin. We're going to turn to page 5. Please join me in Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Ashared, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachi Ashalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu l'shalom, Malachi Ashalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeichen l'shalom, Malachi Ashalom, Malachi Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachi Amlakim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 11. Lechu niranena l'Adonai, Naria letzor yishenu, Nikad mafana betoda, Bizmirot Naria lo, Ki Akadol Man. Arbaim shana kod bedor, v'homar amto elevavhem, v'hem lo yadu dirachai, asher nitbati v'api, mivon amenuchati. Page 13. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai baruchu shemo, basru miyom liyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim knevodo b'chol ha'amim niflotav, Ki gadol Adonai, hulam me'od, norahu, al kol Elohim, yalla, 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 Yismichu hashamayim, Yismichu hashamayim, Yismichu hashamayim, v'tagil haaretz, Yiramayam, 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 umelo, Yiramayam, 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 umelo, Yismichu hashamayim, Yismichu hashamayim, Yismichu hashamayim, v'tagil haaretz. Ya'alo sadai v'chol asher boaz yiranenu kol atzei ya'ar lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel b'tzedek ve'amim b'emunato Adonai malach kanev el haaretz. Or zaru ala tzadik u'l'yishrei lev simecho tzadikim b'Adonai v'hodu lezecher kodsho. 17. Mi yizmor shel shir chadash ki niflot asahu sheyolanu yimenu zalkachon. Eloheinu hariu lanu kol haaretz b'tzichu v'nanu b'samei. Lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel b'tzedek ve'amim b'meisharim. 19. Adonai malach yirkutu amin yoshiv keruvim. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtakavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtakavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtakavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtakavu lehar kodsho. We turn to page 21, we rise. Mizmor leDavid, Havul Adonai b'nei Elim, Havul Adonai, Kavod va'oz yalala, Havul Adonai, Kevod shemo yishlach, Havul Adonai b'arat kodesh, Kol Adonai alamayim el kavod yirim Adonai amayim rabim Kol Adonai bakoach yalala Kol Adonai be'adar Kol Adonai shover arazim Vaishaber Adonai et azei avanon Vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon Vesirion kemo כמו ונראה ממעלה כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש כל אדוני יכיל מדבר יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש כל אדוני יכול אל איילון ויחשוף יערון ובהיכלו כולו אומר כבוד יאללה לאדוני למבול ישב וישב אדוני מלך לעולם אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום יה לה 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 יה לה 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 יה לה לה יה לה לה יה לה 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 לה. You may be seated. Turn to page 23, joining together in the Chadodi. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nikavila lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nikavila shamor v'zakor b'dibor echad Ishmi'anu elam yuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'litila lecha dodi dodi lecha dodi likra kala penei Shabbat nikabela lecha dodi likra kala Penei Shabbat nikabela likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mikor habracha mehirosh mikedem nisucha sov maaseh b'makshavat chila lecha dodi dodi lecha dodi likra kala Penei Shabbat nikabela lecha dodi likra kala Penei Shabbat nikabela mikdash melech ir melucha komitzei mitoch ha'hafecha rav lach shevet bi'emek habacha ve'hu yachmol alayich chemla Lecha dodi dodi lecha dodi likra kala penei Shabbat nikabela lecha dodi likra kala penei Shabbat nikabela hidna ari me'afar kumi Lishi bigdei tifartecha mi Ayad ben Yishai beit alak mi Koreva el nafshi ge'ala Lecha dodi dodi Lecha dodi likra kala Penei Shabbat nikabela Lecha dodi likra kala Penei Shabbat nikabela Hitoreri Kiva ore kumiori ori shidaberi Kevod Adonai alayik nigla Lecha dodi lecha dodi likra kala Penei Shabbat nikabela lecha dodi likra kala Penei Shabbat nikabela. We turn to page 25, the final stanza. We rise and face the door, welcoming the Shabbat bride. בואי ושלום עטרת פעלה, גם בשמחה ובצוהלה, תוך אמונה עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקרא כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. You may be seated. The Psalm for Shabbat, page 27. מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודו אדוני ושמח שמך העליון, הגיבה בכך. Middle of 28. Tzadikatama yifra ki eres bavanon yizke. Tzadikatama yifra ki eres bavanon yizke. Shulim bevet Adonai bechatrot Elohenu yafrichu. Shulim bevet Adonai bechatrot Elohenu yafrichu. Tzadik tamar yifrach ki eres bavanon yizke. Tzadik tamar yifrach ki eres bavanon yizke. Odim nuvon meseva deshenim verananim yiyu. Leagi ki yashar Adonai, tzuri velo avlatabo. Tzadikatama yifrach, ki eres bavanon yizke. Tzadikatama yifrach, ki eres bavanon yizke. Page 29. Adonai Malachim. Idotecha nemenu ma'ulavidecha nava kodesh Adonai liorech yamim. Mourner's Kaddish, page 30. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei rabbah. Bi'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'v'izman kariv yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam melamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. We rise, we begin the Mariv service with the Baruch Hu, page 39a. May be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'dvaro ha'arvim. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. 40. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה, ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאותה ידיך, והיו לטוטפו בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Continue silently, page 42. והיה אם שמעו תשמעו הישר לכם מצוותכם היום לב. משמיים על הארץ ויאמרו להם. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, באמונה כזאת וקיים עלינו כי הוא אדוני אלוהינו והנצחו הטוב, אנחנו ישראל המעלה בתים מעלה. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורתי לו רוסף למלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה, זה לענו ויאמרו Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar kifat Adonai et Yaakov galom yad chazak mimenu baruch ata Adonai ga'al Yisrael. Top of page 45. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu makenu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu makenu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shelomecha baruch ata Adonai hapores sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. We rise. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asor et ha-Shabbat lidorotam barit olam ayai beni u'b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam ki sheshet yamim Adonai et hashamayim v'et ha'aretz u'vayom ha'shvi'i shava v'yinafash yitkada v'yitkada shemei rabbah v'yomad ivra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedecha b'ed Yisrael bagala bagala uv'izman kariv yimeru yesh miraba mivarach li'alam olam yamaya Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnase v'yithadar v'yit'ale v'yithalal shemei kudusha bricho li'elam minko birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran b'yama v'yimeru. The silent Amidah begins page 47. Ose shalom imromav, hu yase shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. 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 V'yimeru. Shabbat shalom. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Dean Bell, the 9th president and CEO of Spertus Institute for Jewish Learning and Leadership, where he also holds a faculty appointment as professor of history. Just so you know, Spertus is the program that I've been studying in for a number of years. It's a program that Rabbi Horowitz just got his doctorate recently in Chassidut. Dr. Bell has served on the faculty of institutions including the DePaul University, Northwestern University, Hebrew Theological College, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, the University of California at Berkeley. He's a historian by trade, and he is widely published in a number of areas, specifically in the medieval and early modern Jewish history, and as well as early modern cultural responses to disaster. His book, which is was published in 2009, A Plague in Early Modern World, A Documentary History, came out just before COVID. What an amazing coincidence. He has written and edited numerous other books. His current research and publications focus on exploration of vulnerability, resilience, and religious leadership. And I'm delighted to welcome you to our Bima. Dr. Bell, please. We look forward to hearing your words of wisdom.
Well, let me begin by wishing you Shabbat Shalom and thanking you for the kind invitation. Usually people have no interest in hearing what I have to say, so I'm really appreciative to have a captive audience, as it were. But it's really delightful to be here, and I want to thank Cantor Levine, who is not only a wonderful colleague, but maybe my best student. Very thoughtful. He does more reading. In fact, I've read a few books that he's included in some of his papers that I hadn't even seen before. So he's remarkable, and you are lucky to have him, and I appreciate the invitation to be here. When I talk about leadership, it's oftentimes when I talk about anything related to Jewish studies, we have this sort of penchant in the Jewish community that we think that the Bible and the rabbinic sources have something to tell us about everything. And in many ways they do, but I remember talking to a colleague of mine at UCLA many years ago, and he says, I don't really think we have something to say about everything, do we? And I started to think about it, and then I decided that, yeah, actually, we have something to say about everything. But in this case, we have something I think very powerful to say, and I wanted to spend just a few minutes that we have here this evening before we finish to talk about Jewish leadership and Jewish texts. And sometimes, yes? Sure, yeah, thank you. Wow, I got so many, it's like the United Nations. Okay, is that better? Okay, very good. I want to talk about Jewish leadership and Jewish texts. And oftentimes when we talk about leadership, we don't think about texts. Texts are sort of theoretical. There's things that we read that we talk about, but they're not practical. They don't give us application. I want to suggest to you that there's actually quite a lot of application that we have in Jewish texts. The second problem we have, though, is that there's a lot of material about leadership out there. If you subscribe to the Harvard Business Review, you get to read all sorts of really interesting studies. And I suppose the second question is, well, does Judaism have anything to teach us beyond what we can read about in the Harvard Business Review or any of these other publications? And I'm going to suggest to you, obviously, that it does. And I've given you a bunch of texts. We're not going to go through all of them. I want to pull out a few highlights and actually spend some time on the last text, which is a poem, because I prefer poetry to most texts, actually. But I want to suggest to you that there is something valuable that our Jewish wisdom, our Jewish thought, our Jewish experiences can teach us, particularly in the field of leadership. So typically when I think about leadership, and I pulled 3 quotes that I think oftentimes elicit what we think about leadership. The first is from the Center for Creative Leadership, where I studied many years ago. They write, leadership is a social process that enables individuals to work together to achieve results that they could never achieve working alone. So this idea of creating collaborative spaces, teamwork, of advancing our projects by bringing other people along. McKinsey & Company, we have to have a good consultant in here as well, says that leadership is a set of mindsets and behaviors that aligns people in collective direction, enables them to work together and accomplish shared goals, all this kind of same stuff. John Cotter, who was sort of the dean of leadership studies for many years, has a slightly different approach, but I think it's useful as well. He writes, leadership is most fundamentally about changes. What leaders do is create the systems and organizations that managers need and eventually elevate them up to a whole new level of change in some basic ways to take advantage of new opportunities. So we have this idea that leadership is about leading people, it's about bringing them along, it's engaging them, collaborating with them, but also about setting the context for and eventually carrying out change as well. Well, I want to suggest to you that that's all well and good, and sometimes our Jewish texts share these similar perspectives, but I think Judaism offers something that's a little bit deeper and perhaps a different kind of approach to leadership as well. And so I'm going to give you a few texts from which we'll extrapolate a few specific ideas, and then I want to sort of tie it together with the notion of the imperfect leader, because actually leadership is about imperfection, and it's about the ways that we struggle to become more perfect in the work that we do, but can never actually attain perfection. So the first text that I have here is one that I'm sure is well known, this comes from a Gemara in the Babylonian Talmud and the Tractate of Sota. And it says, for this reason, because Nachshon, and many people know this Nachshon character, and the tribe of Judah went into the sea first, the tribe of Judah merited to govern Israel. Right? So this idea that somebody who jumps in, right, and leads by sort of doing is somebody that is an important figure and is given some sort of honor as a result of that. The second quote gets at a very specific issue that I'm sure we talk about regularly in the synagogue. Moses received the Torah at Sinai and transmitted it to all sorts of other people who transmitted it further along. The idea here is that leadership is something that we cultivate, that we create another generation to whom we charge that leadership, and then they carry it on as well. The third one is actually, for me, I think, probably the most important one of leadership, and I actually want to spend a little bit of time with this one. This comes from a Gemara in the Babylonian Talmud in Eruvin, and it goes something like this. Rabbi Abba said that Shmuel said, again, this is a leadership technique, right? That we quote other people and we give them the dignity and the honor, but we also elevate their insights at the same time. For 3 years, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagreed. And I think there's something like 367 disagreements between them, and only twice were they actually agreed. These said the halakha, the Jewish law, is in accordance with our opinion. And these said the halakha is in accordance with our opinion. Sounds like my house. Ultimately, a divine voice emerged and proclaimed. And notice that we have a divine voice that's emanating down to make the distinction here. Both these and those are the word of the living God. However, the halakha is in accordance with the opinion of Beit Hillel. So now the Talmud is going to ask us a question. Well, if they're both the word of living God, well, why is one accepted in the halakhic decision-making and one is not? Since both these and those are the words of the living God, why were Beit Hillel privileged to have the halakha established in accordance with their opinion? And here's the really interesting reason. The reason is that they were agreeable and forbearing. Agreeable and forbearing. Now we're thinking about leadership. Agreeable and forbearing, showing restraint when affronted, and when they taught the halakha, they would teach both their own statements and the statements of Beit Shammai. Moreover, when they formulated their teachings and cited a dispute, and this is really cool, they prioritized the statements of Beit Shammai to their own statements in deference to Beit Shammai. So this notion, which I think we really have a lot of challenge with in our own world today, where we're so polarized we can't see other positions, the leadership that's inherent in this is maybe we still think our position is correct, but we understand, we ask questions about the other position, we even cite it first to give it a dignity. And then we might, in fact, come to a conclusion that we don't agree with it, but we are centering the opposition in a certain way, and that is actually real leadership. It's not just telling us what to do or telling us how to think, but it's engaging with a variety of different ways that people might actually enact with the world around them. If you turn to the next page, there's this wonderful quote. I'm not going to read it. It actually is from a book by Ismar Shorsh, who was the chancellor at Jewish Theological Seminary, and he talks about this sort of wonderful story about Isidore Rabi, who won the Nobel Prize. And it's a very famous story by now, which is every day when he would come home, he would be asked not what he learned, but did he ask a good question? And it's a really entertaining story, and I've given you the quote here. I think many people have probably come across it. But I want to suggest to you that, and we see this in much of the leadership scholarship, that one of the most important things about leadership is asking questions. Right? We used to believe the sage on the stage, the great man in history, and literally it was gendered in that way, right? The person who was the expert was somebody who didn't need to ask for advice, didn't need to see other perspectives. But we realize in a very dynamic and changing world, and frankly even in the past, we don't know everything. And so we have to ask questions to discern what's going on around us, to get other feedback, other opinions, other perspectives. That's actually the only way that we can really lead. And so I added the question part in here. Since the parsha is Yitro, and it's actually always a very good parsha for talking about leadership, I just gave you the quote here, but I wanted to point out a few things in the text that we often don't talk about. Yitro upbraids Moses. Why? For acting alone, right? That's a sort of a no-no in leadership. You can't actually act alone. Leadership is about relationships between individuals, between leaders and followers, between different groups of people. And so when you act alone, you're not actually leading. You're actually doing something different entirely. And he says, of course, you're going to wear yourself out, but the language he uses is also interesting. You're also going to wear out the people, right? When you're acting alone and making these decisions and everybody's coming to you, you're wearing yourself out, but you're wearing them out because the process isn't the right process. And he goes through a whole set of advice that he gives them about how to identify God-fearing people who understand truth and to train them and make them decisors and judges over other people and other cases. Again, another principle in leadership that we have to empower others, we have to train the next generation of leaders. It's a very famous thing, I suppose, they say in the leadership field that you train your next successor. And if you haven't done that, you actually haven't done your work as a leader. The good news for me is I have somebody in the wings who's going to be a very good leader, and I can't wait for her to take over so that I can move on to something else. But it's a very important sort of series of lessons that come out of Yitro. But all of it, in a certain way, I think pales in comparison to the last point I want to make, which is leadership is about being incomplete and trying to learn, right? And so I happen to be fortunate to run an institution that has learning and leading in its title. It's kind of a mouthful. I'd like to call it Spertus University or Spertus College, or even the College of Jewish Studies like it used to be called in the old days. But there is something about the learning and leading that come together that's really important. We even developed a new course called Leading a Learning Organization, because I don't think you can separate out learning and leading. And so I want to share this sort of incomplete leader concept as a way of thinking about what a unique Jewish contribution is to leadership. Now, many in the academic space have come to realize that leaders are incomplete. By definition, everybody's incomplete. And part of what we do is try to learn things and to advance ourselves. So there have been a number of studies that come out recently, and I gave you a few quotes. Right, the executive's job isn't to know everything, it's to get people together. It's to find out information from different people, to coordinate actions, to bring people along, to move things forward. But as I think about leadership, I think actually what sums it up most is a poem by Peter Cole. And I don't know if anybody's ever read Peter Cole. He's got some amazing hair, which is the first thing you notice about him when you meet him. And I had the opportunity to interview him several years ago. I think he's one of the best poets ever. He's written some really amazing poetry himself, but he also translates medieval poetry. And with his wife, he wrote a book called Sacred Trash, which was about the Geniza fragments, which is it's a remarkable book as well. But this might be my favorite poem of all time. So I want to share it with you, and then I want to sort of draw just a few quick conclusions about leadership in a Jewish textual key. So Peter Cole writes in The Perfect State, the perfect state of being human isn't perfection, it's becoming, the Greeks say, ever more real. In nearing but never quite reaching a certain ideal. Like translation, it's deficient, a chronic affection. Perfection for the Kabbalist is reached only when the fortress is breached. To the brokenness, the husks the other side, so imperfection becomes a guide. And notice this Kabbalistic notion of these broken shards everywhere that are still part and parcel of the whole, but we have to find them, collect them, refract them. Perfection, the feeling philosopher says, suggests an openness to endless change, the self in radical revolution. Within a self it soon finds strange. The spirit warrior's path to perfection comprises trials involving great fear. And what of us in leadership roles haven't known about these travails and these crises that we deal with? An allegorical learning to fathom the power passing through one's ear. A person approaches her perfect nature and becomes herself in the truest sense by acceding at times to the angel within her its flitting presence our only defense. It's a very powerful poem, right? And it talks about this notion that we are always seeking something more. We can't necessarily attain it, but along the way we are learning and we are growing and we're bringing other people along with us. And this, I want to suggest, is what Jewish leadership is all about. And you will find elements of this in all of the literature, in the Harvard Business Review, and many of the other studies that come out, but they only touch upon these things. Whereas in Judaism, this is core to what we think about and do every day. Right? It's part of who we are as a people. Our textual tradition reiterates it in everything that we study and everything that we talk about and in all of our actions. And so for me, Judaism actually provides us with some significant real-world lessons as well as texts as we navigate the difficulties that we face today. We used to think that we were perfect, and that's how we became leaders, right? The more perfect we became, the better a leader we were. I want to suggest that the more imperfect we realize we are, and the more that we need to learn and engage, the better our leadership will be, and the more opportunities we will have to grow and to bring other people along with us. So thank you very much.
Trying to imagine living in a world where differences of opinion are respected. Page 53, we rise for Vayechulu. Vayechulu hashamayim ve'haaretz v'chol tzivam vayechal Elohim hayom hashivim elakto asher asa vayitbot bayom hashivim mikom elakto asher asa vayevarech Elohim et yom hashivi vayekadesh oto ki bo shavat mikom elakto asher bara Elohim lasod. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Konei Shamayim v'Haaretz Magen Avot bidvaro Mechayim etim b'mamaro Ha'el HaKadosh she'en kamo Hameniach le'amo B'yom Shabbat kodsho Kivam ratza le'aniach lahem Kivam ratza le'aniach lahem Lefanav navor b'ravach V'nodeh lishmo b'chol yom tamid min habrachot Shalom Mikadesh HaShabar Varek Shevi Umeniak Bikdusha Le'amedu Shnei Oneg Zecher Lemase Vereshit Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Ritzei v'imnuchatenu Kachenu b'mitzvotecha V'ten chelkenu b'toratecha Sabenu mitovecha V'samkenu b'shuatecha V'taher libeinu Li'ovdecha be'emet V'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu B'yava uvratzon Shabbat Kodshem v'yanuchu v'Yisrael mekadesh shemecha Baruch ata Adonai mekadesh haShabbat Yitkara v'yikara shemei rabba me'miyom adivra chirut evyam lichmachute b'chayechonu v'imechonu v'chay d'chol beit Yisrael b'agala v'zman karev v'imeru Yehi shmei rabba mivarach li'alam olam me'amaya Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalash shmei l'kodesha b'richu li'ela minko birchata v'shirata tishbchata v'nechamata damiran v'yalama v'yimeru amen Tikabal tzilor honu v'aud hon d'chol Yisrael kodam avahon v'shmaya v'yimeru amen Yehi shlama rabba min shemai v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imeru. We turn to page 55, and we remain standing for Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddush b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodesho b'yava uvratzon inchilanu Zikaron למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי באנו בחרת, ואותנו כי מכהנים ושבת קודשך באהבה ורצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת Page 56, Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ati yotzer brishid, shelo asanu ki goyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'kol hamonam. ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת יום והשבות אל לבביך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד כן נקבל לכם ככתוב בתורתך הנעים לך לעולם וערב ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד. May be seated. On this Shabbat, our hearts go out to the families of Ellen Gilbert Teller, Lynn Ulaner, Susan Kaufman-Lapin, and Eric Geiger. We're observing the yahrzeits of Joseph Bine, David Binderman, Barbara Buck, Isaac Dvoretsky, Nettie Eigler, Nusi Ginsburg, Michael Goldberg, Victor Hatena, Saul Kitt, Therese Kleiman, Mo Korenman, Ruth Rapson, Harriet Resnick, Emily Ellerin Rickles, Benjamin Rosenthal, Leonard Sabloff, Jules Savin, Burton Sissenwine, Ann Swedelson, and Rabbi Dr. Gerald Teller. All those in a period of mourning, those observing yahrzeit, we ask you to rise. The words of Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 58. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach li'olam elamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei kudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. You may be seated. Couple of announcements. Minyan, we always have it Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. on Zoom. This Sunday will also be on Zoom only at 9 a.m. Because of Yom Limud, we're closing the building, not paying for security, and so this Sunday only, it'll be on Zoom, 9 a.m. We're excited, as we said, to have Dr. Dean Bell here with us this evening and for the entire weekend as we continue our learning. Tomorrow morning, during services, Dr. Bell will present the Devar Torah entitled, What is a Covenant? Gee, I wonder where that idea came from. There we go, it's a week of the Ten Commandments. And then following the Kiddush lunch, a presentation tradition in Jewish tradition. Dr. Bell will also be presenting at Yom Limud this Sunday, which is being held at Beth Yeshurun. If you've not been to one of our Yomei Limud, over 1,000 people gather together from all over Houston, come together, study. There are dozens of presenters on different topics. Certainly Dr. Bell will be presenting again. If you've not been, even if you have been, we urge you to come and consider what a wonderful statement about Jewish learning going on in Houston to have that kind of crowd gathered. And also note, because of that, there's no adult education here at the synagogue. There's no religious school here on Sunday. All is closed so that we encourage everybody to find their way over to Beth Yeshurun, find classes, study, bring back new ideas. We pray together, we play together. Casino night is almost here. Join us next Saturday evening for a wonderful evening of fun, casino tables, mahjong tables, silent auction, much more, all going, the money raised for that evening will go to the religious school and our young family programs. We want, although we understand the price for some may be high, if you have any concerns, speak to Melissa. We want everyone to be able to attend. Money should not get in the way. So we will welcome you no matter what. And then that same February 23rd, we ask you to consider for the seniors to join Chazak at 2 p.m. for their February event with Speaker Al Tribble, leading a situational awareness training. Al has been hired by Federation to protect all of us and to give synagogues lots of wisdom in the process of making sure we are all safe. He'll be here that afternoon. And then CBS Women invites you to join them that same afternoon at 5 p.m. for the latest in their potluck speaker series. Melanie Rosen and Karen Harris will present Going the Distance, Finding Our Personal Limits and Going Beyond in Our 40s and 50s. Well, that's past. For those of you who have registered for the dinner, we're just going to ask everyone to go out this door and come around the side for dinner and to join us for Dr. Bell once again. And Shabbat Shalom. I think we've got all the announcements. There's probably a few more in the Madrich. Please take a look. We're going to ask you to please rise as we conclude our services with Hatikva, page 448. Finima nefesh Yehudi homia ufate mizrach kadima ayin letzion sofi od love tikvatenu hatikva bachnot alpayim leodam chofshi be'artzenu eretz Zion Yerushalayim leodam chofshi be'artzenu eretz Zion Yerushalayim. As is our tradition, we ask you to find someone, put your arms around them as we extend the priestly blessings one to another. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichoneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.